So now let's begin with making an HTTP call. First thing I need to mention here is that we do not have any REST API, or we are not making it either. Then how are we going to check the HTTP calls? So we have a JSON placeholder website. Let me open the JSON placeholder site. Here is the JSON placeholder, and this website gives you free fake API for testing and prototyping. So when you want to mock the REST API, the HTTP call environment, then you can use JSON placeholder. There are many services available in fact, but I am choosing this JSON placeholder. Also, the API endpoints I am going to use are to-dos and users. So we'll try to fetch the users and to-dos data in our React application. If I click here on users, you see that there is an ID, name, username, email, and the address data. Also, if I check on the to-dos, then there also we have the user ID, title, and completed flag. So it's just a sample data we have in the JSON format, and this is what we are going to retrieve inside our React application. So let's begin with the application. The first thing is I'm going to type npx create react app, and the application name I'm going to use is http demo, and I press enter. This is going to create the application. Alright, so now we are ready with the boilerplate code. Now I will go to app.js, and from header to header I'm going to remove the code. I'll just keep this division. Alright, so now we are done with the application. Now the first thing is I want to put two buttons here, users and to-dos. So let me have buttons. I'll say button, users, and also button, to-dos, and button. Now let's check the output. So here we see that the buttons are getting displayed. Let's give some formatting to the button also. I'll just show you very quickly. There is a ready CSS. So I'm going to give height, width, the font size, color, the background color, and margin. Now let me just save this, and let me also put one more division before these buttons. So I'll say division, and I just give a class name here, top bar, and this class I am creating again here. So I'll go to app.css, I'll say dot top bar, width 100%, height 50 pixels, and background color where I give some RGB values. Let's just save this and check the output once again. Now on click of users and on click of to-dos, we want to fetch the data. So let's do that. I'm going to create a function. I'll say const fetch users. Now I'm going to use the fetch API in it. Here, if I have to explain the very basic thing at the moment, I can say that fetch works like this, that you give the fetch API. Here you give the URL, you put a comma, and you have an optional object literal. This object can have the request type and request configuration. At the moment, we don't want that. We are just going to fetch the data. So we do not need anything else here. We are just going to give the URL. Let me just go to the users and copy the URL. Let me just paste this here. Now this is going to return the promise. So I can say dot then, and let's say the value returned will be stored in the response because it's a response object. Again, I'm going to convert this response into JSON. So I'll say response.json. JSON is just a JavaScript function. So that gives me the JSON data. Again, I'm going to configure the next then, and the same JSON data, I'm going to just say console log. That's it. Let me just save this and let me check the output first. So let me just click on the users, and you see that there are 10 records. If I expand it, we have the ID, name, username, and the email and the address as well. So this user thing is configured. So the same thing we can apply to to-dos as well. So let me go back to the coding. I'm going to configure the fetch to-dos function. Inside this, I'll just say fetch, and in the single quotes, let me go to the JSON placeholder. I select to-dos here. Let me copy the URL, and let's paste this URL here. And similarly, we'll say then, and the response, and next is the JSON, and I'm going to console log. So that's it. Let's save it again and go back to the output. So here I click on users. We have the data of users. Let me clear the console. If I click on to-dos, again we have the related records. So this is how we configure the basic GET request. We can do the post, delete, and various other requests. Of course, we are going to understand that step by step. In fact, we are going to configure this data in some component, and we'll try to organize the data in more presentable way. Now let's talk about a relative question. The question is, how do you call a REST API in your React application, or how do you make an HTTP call for that matter? So the way you make an HTTP call, earlier we had Axios, the Axios library. We still have it. You can certainly use it, but often we see that the fetch API, the newer fetch API approach is more appropriate, and developers are using this extensively. So this is how you make the fetch API call, where you just pass the URL and then it returns the promise, and then you configure that response with JSON, and the converted JSON data you can display this way.